Today we're just going to answer the question on why do matter float and sink. So I'm going to give illustrations for you to basically understand why do matter float and sink. So let's say we have a container here that has a water in it. So we know the density of the water. It is 1000 kilogram per cubic meter. And we're going to put something like ice and aluminum. So we have a given here that the density of ice is 917 kilogram per cubic meter, and the aluminum is around 2700 kilogram per cubic meter. So let's say we put the ice. So after we put the ice, it will float. So why do it float? So it float because of the density. The density of water is much greater. No, not much, but much greater than the density of the ice. So the density of the ice is less than the density of the water, meaning it will float, of course. So what about the aluminum? That is 2700 kilogram cubic meter. So will it sink or float? So of course it will sink because it does have much more dense. It is much more dense than the water. So if you're going to ask yourself on how to swim, what you need to do is just be less dense than the water, and then you can just float, right? Just you need to swim. If you want to swim, you need to learn how to swim. So now let's consider this. So we have two balloons here, and we have the molar mass of each balloon. So the air inside it. So the substance, what do you call that? So this will float because its molar mass, we call this molar mass. This is 4 grams per mole. It will float because it is much more less than the molar mass of the air, which is 28.9 grams per mole. So it will float. So how about the carbon dioxide? The balloon with carbon dioxide. And we all know that it will sink because look at its molar mass. It's 44 grams per mole, which is much greater than the molar mass of the air, right? So it will sink. So as that's why we can see that if we burn up something and then there's a smoke, those are carbon dioxide. They will never flow. They will never float. Now let's say if we're cooking something. So this is in a hot stove. So we're just cooking something. So the thing that rises is hot air, and the thing that goes down is the cold air. So hot air rises and cold air rises. So why do hot air rise? So why do hot air floats? It's basically because hot air is less dense than the cold air, right? So we're going to name this thing. So hot air. So the density difference. So hot air is less dense, that's why it floats. And cold air, it sinks because it is much more dense. So what if the physics is different now? What if the cold air just is less dense than the hot air? What will happen? Okay, now we're going to explain why do hot air balloon floats. So the concept earlier, it just connected to this one. So we just basically heat up this thing, and then hot air will go inside it on this big balloon here. So this thing is now filled up with hot air. That means it will just basically go up because hot air is less dense than the cold air, right? So hot air, they will rise. That causes it to go up. And then cold air, they will just go down. So pushing it another up, right? So cold air, they will sink. and this hot air will float. So that's it. That is how why do matter float and sink. It's just basically because of their density difference. And I hope you learned something today, and goodbye.